Your grandparents didn't go to the health food store. They didn't buy supplements. They didn't order powders from the internet. They walked outside, pulled something from the garden, and ate it. And here's what nobody talks about: they were healthier for it. The chronic disease, the inflammation, the epidemic of conditions filling hospitals today, these were a fraction of what they are now. Not because medicine was better, because the food was different. Today, I'm going to show you 20 plants that were grown in ordinary gardens a generation or two ago, that fed families through hard times, that grandmothers and farmers knew by name, and that have almost completely disappeared from the modern diet without most people noticing they were gone. These are not exotic imports. They are not recent discoveries. They are plants that grew in the same soil your grandparents worked, that your great-grandparents considered ordinary, and that the modern food system quietly replaced with things that last longer on a shelf and cost more at the checkout. Stay until number 1. Because that plant was once one of the most important food crops in human history, was deliberately suppressed, and contained something nutritional science is only now beginning to fully understand. Welcome to the quiet garden. Let's get into it. 20. Lamb's quarters. Most people pull lamb's quarters out of the vegetable garden without a second thought. It looks like a weed. It grows fast and appears uninvited between the rows of things you actually intended to plant. Your grandparents knew better. Lamb's quarters was a staple food plant across Europe and North America for centuries. Native American communities ground the seeds into flour. Rural families ate the leaves as a cooked green through spring and early summer. It was a regular part of the diet because it was abundantly available and deeply nutritious. The numbers are hard to argue with. Lamb's quarters contains more calcium than kale, more protein than spinach, more iron than most cultivated greens, and significant amounts of vitamins A, C, and K. The nutritional profile is more complete than almost anything in the produce section of a modern supermarket. It tastes like mild spinach when cooked. It still grows in gardens everywhere. It just gets pulled out now instead of eaten. 19. Purslane. Purslane has the most remarkable nutritional profile of any common garden plant, and it is pulled out of more gardens every summer than almost anything else on this list. Those thick, succulent-looking leaves spreading in low mats across warm soil in midsummer. That plant is the single richest plant source of omega-3 fatty acids anywhere in the plant kingdom. More than flaxseed, more than chia. It also has more melatonin than any other plant food studied, more glutathione than almost any vegetable you could buy, and more vitamin E than spinach. In Turkey, Greece, Lebanon, and across the Mediterranean world, purslane has been eaten as a vegetable for over 2,000 years. In Western gardens, sometime in the last century, it was reclassified as a weed. The taste is mild and slightly lemony. Raw in salads, wilted with olive oil and lemon, stirred into soups at the last moment. It works in any dish that calls for a tender green, and it grows itself, without being asked, every summer. 18. Stinging nettle. Stinging nettle has been a food plant, a fiber crop, and a survival resource for over 3,000 years. Before cotton, nettle fiber made cloth across northern Europe. As food, it was the plant that got communities through the hungry months at the end of winter, pushing up in early spring, providing iron, protein, and vitamins to people who had gone months without fresh greens. The sting disappears completely with 2 minutes of blanching. What remains is a rich, dark green leaf with more iron than spinach, more calcium than milk, significant protein and vitamins A, C, and K in abundance. Your grandparents' generation treated nettle patches at the field edges as a resource. They picked them in spring with thick gloves, blanched them, ate them, and didn't waste them. The generation after that sprayed them. 17. Dandelion. The dandelion was not always a lawn weed. It was a food plant, deliberately cultivated in kitchen gardens across Europe and North America well into the 20th century. The roots were roasted as a coffee substitute during wartime rationing. The flowers were made into wine and syrup. The leaves were grown alongside lettuces and eaten through spring. Every part is useful. Young leaves are high in vitamins A, C, and K, with more calcium than milk and more iron than spinach. The root, dried and roasted, produces a caffeine-free drink that genuinely resembles coffee. Medicinally, dandelion root is one of the most respected liver herbs in traditional medicine, supporting detoxification, stimulating bile production, and acting as a gentle natural diuretic. It grows in every lawn in the world, pulling itself from the soil every spring, completely free, and almost all of it gets pulled out or sprayed before anyone thinks to use it. 16. Elderberry. Within living memory, elderberry bushes were a standard part of the rural garden. Families picked the berries every autumn and made cordial and syrup that was stored specifically for use when illness came. Elderberry syrup at the first sign of a cold was standard practice in households across Europe and North America. Then the elder fell out of fashion. The knowledge stopped being passed down. Modern clinical trials have now confirmed what those households understood through experience. Elderberry extract significantly reduces the duration and severity of colds and flu. The berries contain flavonoids that directly interfere with the ability of viruses to replicate inside cells. A bottle of elderberry syrup at the pharmacy costs $15 to $20 and lasts 2 weeks. Your grandparents made a year's supply at home from berries growing wild along the fence line. 15. Sorrel. Sorrel was grown in kitchen gardens across Europe for centuries. That bright, sharp, lemony flavor from natural oxalic acid, used in soups, sauces, salads, and egg dishes, was a staple quality in household cooking that the garden supplied directly. It disappeared when the food system industrialized. Sorrel wilts within hours of cutting and cannot survive commercial distribution, so it vanished from shops, then from gardens, then from most people's awareness entirely. It is a perennial that returns every year without replanting, produces heavily from early spring through late autumn, grows in almost any soil, and offers a flavor no other garden plant replicates. High in vitamin C and potassium, with genuine anti-inflammatory properties. Plant it once and it is there for decades. 14. Lovage. Lovage was grown in every serious kitchen garden in Europe and colonial America. Every part is useful, the leaves flavoring soups and stews with an intense celery-like depth, the seeds used as a spice, the stems used as natural drinking straws for savory drinks, the roots eaten as a vegetable. It was replaced when celery became widely available commercially, a direct substitution that most people made without thinking about what they were losing. What was lost is a robust perennial growing to 6 feet, producing abundantly from poor soil with minimal care, with stronger flavor and more medicinal value than celery, and none of celery's demanding cultivation requirements. Almost no one grows it anymore. Most people have never heard of it. 13. Jerusalem artichoke. Jerusalem artichoke was a staple food across North America before European settlement and spread rapidly through European kitchen gardens in the 17th century. Then the potato arrived, and within a few generations, the Jerusalem artichoke retreated from mainstream gardens almost entirely. What was lost is a vegetable with extraordinary nutritional character. Jerusalem artichokes are one of the richest food sources of inulin, a prebiotic fiber that feeds beneficial gut bacteria with a selectivity and efficiency most other foods cannot match. For gut health, for the microbiome now understood to be connected to immune function, mood, metabolism, and inflammation across the whole body, inulin is among the most valuable things you can eat. The tubers taste like a mild, nutty cross between a potato and an artichoke heart. They grow in the hardest conditions, clay, compacted soil, neglected ground, and come back every year without being replanted. They ask for nothing and give back abundantly. 12. Good King Henry. Good King Henry was one of the most commonly grown vegetables in European kitchen gardens from medieval times through the 19th century. The leaves were eaten like spinach. The young shoots in spring were blanched and eaten like asparagus. The flower heads were cooked like broccoli. It was a plant that gave something edible at almost every stage of growth, across most of the year, with almost no cultivation required. It disappeared when spinach became widely available commercially. A direct replacement, similar flavor, similar use, and the knowledge of good King Henry faded within a generation. What the substitution lost is a plant with higher protein than spinach, higher iron, and a vitamin profile that matches or exceeds its replacement. A perennial replaced by an annual that must be replanted every season in carefully prepared soil. The convenient choice was the less nutritious, more demanding one. 11. Sea buckthorn. Sea buckthorn berries contain more vitamin C than any other plant source, 15 times more than oranges. They contain vitamins A, E, K, and B12, one of the only plant sources of B12 that exists. They contain all 4 omega fatty acids in a combination found almost nowhere else in the plant world. Traditional communities across Central Asia, Russia, China, and the Himalayas have eaten sea buckthorn for centuries. In the regions where it grows naturally, it was never forgotten because it was never replaced. In Western Europe and North America, it was simply never widely known, a gap in the knowledge that traveled, rather than a loss of knowledge that existed. The shrub is ornamental, thorny, cold-hardy to extreme temperatures and drought-tolerant. It fixes nitrogen in the soil, improving the ground around it. And it gives one of the most nutritionally concentrated fruits available anywhere in the temperate world. 10. Hawthorn. The hawthorn hedge was once a fundamental part of the rural landscape, and the families who lived alongside those hedges harvested from them every year without thinking of it as anything unusual. The young leaves in spring were eaten raw in the fields. The flowers made a sweet cordial. The berries in autumn were made into jelly, and syrup kept through winter for heart support. Modern clinical trials have confirmed what generations of observation already established. Hawthorn measurably improves heart function, reduces blood pressure, lowers LDL cholesterol, and reduces chest tightness associated with mild heart conditions. The compounds responsible relax blood vessels and improve circulation throughout the body. Your grandparents lived beside hawthorn hedges and used them without needing a clinical trial to explain why. 9. Rosehips. Before vitamin C supplements existed, rosehips were the vitamin C supply. During the Second World War in Britain, when citrus imports were cut off by naval blockades, the government organized a national rosehip collection program. Children and volunteers gathered wild rosehips from hedgerows across the country, and they were processed into syrup, distributed to keep the population supplied with vitamin C through the war years. That program worked because rosehips genuinely contain extraordinary amounts of vitamin C, somewhere between 10 and 40 times more per gram than oranges, depending on variety. They also contain vitamins A, E, and K, and compounds now being studied for osteoarthritis, where rosehip preparations have shown meaningful reductions in pain and inflammation in clinical trials. Every rose produces rosehips. A generation ago, harvesting them in autumn was ordinary knowledge. Now most people walk straight past them. 8. Quince. The quince was once as familiar in the kitchen as the apple. Quince marmalade, the original marmalade, before oranges dominated the form, was the preserve most likely to be found in a well-stocked household. Quince paste was eaten across the Mediterranean world as an everyday condiment. It appeared in meat dishes, tarts, jellies, sauces, and drinks. And then it retreated. Oranges became cheap. Apples bred for eating raw became more appealing than a fruit that required cooking. Within a few generations, the quince moved from ordinary to old-fashioned to forgotten. What the forgetting cost is a fruit with one of the highest phenolic antioxidant contents among common fruits, an extraordinary pectin content, and a long history of use in traditional medicine for digestive complaints, nausea, and liver support. Still available from specialist nurseries. Still extraordinary when cooked. Still waiting to be remembered. 7. Aronia berry. Aronia, the chokeberry, is native to North America. It was eaten by Native American communities who understood its properties, noticed by Eastern European plant breeders who brought it to Poland and Russia, and has been commercially grown and eaten in Eastern Europe for decades. In North America, where it originated, it is almost completely unknown. Aronia berries contain the highest concentration of antioxidants ever measured in a fruit, higher than blueberries, higher than acai, higher than elderberry. The compounds have been studied for cardiovascular benefits, blood sugar regulation, and anti-inflammatory effects in multiple clinical research programs. The berries are too astringent to eat in quantity raw, but as a juice, a wine, a jam, or a dried berry they are extraordinary. A fruit with one of the most powerful nutritional profiles in the plant world, originating in North America, better known in Poland than in the country where it grows wild. 6. Mallow. Common mallow grows along roadsides, in waste ground, in neglected garden corners across the temperate world. Most people who see it have no idea it has been eaten for as long as humans have been eating plants. The ancient Romans ate mallow as a vegetable. The leaves were cooked as greens. The immature seed pods, shaped like small round cheeses, earning the folk name of cheese plant, were eaten raw. The roots, mucilaginous in water, were used medicinally for the same family of soothing compounds found in marshmallow root, coating and calming irritated membranes in the throat, the gut, and the urinary tract. It produces abundantly through the growing season, grows in the hardest conditions without being asked, and has a mild, pleasant flavor when cooked. And almost nobody eats it anymore, because almost nobody knows it can be eaten. 5. Blackcurrant. Blackcurrant is one of the few plants on this list that hasn't entirely disappeared, but the full intimacy with which it was once used has faded considerably. The berries contain 4 times more vitamin C than oranges by weight and an antioxidant profile with documented effects on eye health, circulation, brain function, and inflammation. But the berries are only part of the story. The leaves of the blackcurrant bush are medicinal in their own right. Blackcurrant leaf tea, with a fresh, slightly resinous flavor, contains many of the same antioxidant compounds as the berries. Traditional European herbal medicine used it for gout, inflammatory joint conditions, fever, and as a general tonic. Households that grew blackcurrants a generation ago dried the leaves after pruning and used them through winter. Most people who grow blackcurrants today use only the fruit and discard the rest without knowing what they're throwing away. 4. Ashwagandha. Ashwagandha has been grown in household gardens across India and parts of the Middle East for thousands of years. In Ayurvedic medicine, it is one of the most central herbs in the entire tradition, used to support energy, reduce stress, improve sleep, and strengthen the immune system. In the households where this knowledge lived, it was as ordinary as growing thyme or rosemary is in a Western garden. Modern clinical trials have validated the traditional use with remarkable depth. Ashwagandha root extract has been shown to significantly reduce cortisol levels, lower anxiety scores, improve sleep quality, increase muscle strength and recovery, and support thyroid function. The active compounds act on the body's stress response systems in ways that are now well understood. The plant grows as a perennial in warm climates and as an annual in cooler ones. It tolerates heat and drought and asks for little. The knowledge of how to grow and use it simply never crossed into the Western kitchen garden tradition, And in its absence, people pay supplement prices for something that grows easily from seed. 3. Moringa. Moringa, the drumstick tree, the tree of life, has been grown in household gardens across India, East Africa, and Southeast Asia for centuries. In the regions where it grows naturally, it is not a superfood discovery. It is simply food. The leaves contain more vitamin C than oranges, more calcium than milk, more iron than spinach, more potassium than bananas, and all 9 essential amino acids. A complete protein from a single plant food, which is extraordinarily rare in the plant kingdom. Every part of the plant is useful. In tropical climates, it grows several feet per month and produces harvestable leaves within weeks of planting. The grandparents who grew moringa didn't call it a superfood. They called it the tree at the edge of the garden that they took leaves from every morning for the cooking pot. The nutritional science that confirms what they already knew has generated a global supplement industry. The plant itself remains exactly as it always was. 2. Sea kale. Sea kale crambe maritima grows naturally on coastal shingle beaches, bare gravel, almost no soil, salt spray and wind, the conditions most plants consider a death sentence. It was gathered from coastlines and eaten across northern Europe for centuries, then brought into kitchen gardens where it was cultivated deliberately. The crowns covered in spring to blanch the emerging shoots, producing pale, tender growth that was considered one of the great delicacies of the kitchen garden. Sea kale was served at aristocratic tables and working family tables alike through the 18th and 19th centuries. Then it simply faded. No obvious reason, no replacement. It just stopped being grown, stopped being eaten, stopped being known. The roots go deep into whatever substrate the plant is growing in, finding water and minerals that shallow-rooted plants cannot reach, which is why it succeeds on shingle beaches and in poor, dry, stony soil where most vegetables fail immediately. Once established from seed or root cuttings, it produces for 20 years or more from the same crown. The young blanched shoots taste like a cross between cabbage and asparagus. The flower shoots are eaten like broccoli. The mature plant produces clusters of fragrant white flowers that are themselves edible. A plant that grows on bare gravel, needs almost no soil, produces for 2 decades from one planting, and was considered a genuine culinary delicacy. Forgotten so completely that most gardeners today have never heard of it. 1. Amaranth. Amaranth was once one of the most important food crops in the Western Hemisphere. Before European colonization, amaranth was a staple crop for the Aztec civilization, grown on the same scale as maize and beans, forming a central part of the diet of millions of people. The seeds were ground into flour for bread and porridge. The leaves were eaten as a vegetable. It was not a minor crop. It was fundamental. When the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, they recognized that destroying the food supply would accelerate the collapse of the civilization they were conquering. Amaranth cultivation was actively suppressed. Growing it was made punishable by death in some regions. Within a few generations, a crop that had fed millions was reduced to a remnant. What was suppressed is nutritionally extraordinary. Amaranth grain contains more protein than any common cereal, around 14 to 16% by weight, and that protein contains lysine, an amino acid absent in most grains, making it a complete protein source. It is gluten-free, high in iron, magnesium, and manganese, and contains squalene, a compound with antioxidant and cholesterol-lowering properties found almost nowhere else in the plant kingdom. The leaves are equally nutritious, higher in protein, calcium, and iron than spinach. The plant grows in heat, in drought, in poor soil, in conditions where most crops fail. It produces abundantly from a small area, reseeds itself readily, and asks for almost nothing. Amaranth is growing right now in gardens across the world, as an ornamental, as a cut flower, for its dramatic plumes of red and gold. Most people who grow it never think to eat it. They are growing one of the most complete food plants that exists and treating it as decoration. A civilization was partly broken by suppressing this plant. That is worth knowing. 20 plants. 20 things that fed and healed the people who came before us, that the modern food system quietly set aside, and that are still here, still growing, still extraordinary, waiting to be brought back into the garden. The doctors won't tell you about these plants because their training focuses on treating illness, not on the food that prevents the need for treatment in the first place. The supermarket won't stock most of them because they don't survive the supply chain. The supplement industry has found some of them and charges accordingly. But the garden hasn't forgotten. The seeds are still available. The knowledge, though scattered, is still findable. Every plant in today's video can be grown at home. Some in pots, some in small beds, some in the corners and edges where nothing else produces. They don't need perfect conditions. They were grown by ordinary people in ordinary gardens for centuries before anyone needed to be told how. Start with one, grow it this season, eat it. And if this video reconnected you with something you'd forgotten, share it with someone who needs to know. Subscribe to The Quiet Garden if you haven't already. This is what we do here, find the knowledge that was always there, that the modern world moved too fast to carry with it. See you in the next one.
So hello guys, this is Roman and welcome to our channel The Quick Garden, where we will post the videos about weeds, plants and everything. So hope you will like the every video being posted in this channel, and thank you so much.